Let's have a little presence, little presencing.
And maybe everybody can put themselves on mute
Oh yeah.
for right now.
Good thinking. Except me, because I'll keep talking. There, that's nice and quiet now. Fantastic. Okay. Uh, it's wonderful for us all to be gathered here. Let's be with ourselves, present with ourselves. Closing our eyes sometimes helps with that. Taking a few intentional, conscious, deep breaths helps us with being connected to our physical bodies and our energetic bodies. We're here gathered together as we have been many other times in purpose of supporting the realization of the full potential of humanity, the mission of the Sentinel. And in support of that, we understand that our own journey to lasting health supports ourselves and those around us and all human beings in realizing their full potential. And it's very good to remind ourselves that that path to lasting health and realization of full potential is a joyful one. And when we feel the natural pain of being human, being in these physical bodies and in this plane that we exist in on Earth, that we hold that focus and experience of joy in our lives as the way to travel through all that is challenging. Breathe that in and welcome all those who are part of our team that are not able to be here, but are supporting us fully in this endeavor. And all of our support networks. And all of humanity. And all of the earth and the cosmos is working with us. When you feel ready, you can come back to this realm, open your eyes. And we'll get started in this next phase of our conversation.
Thanks, John, for that. I really appreciate the beginning of this. And just checking that we're recording.
Yes, we are. Thank you. May we never not record again. Well, I envy you that are in Mexico. We have a cloudy, rainy day here in Vancouver. And I envy those who are in Spain and in Caslo, or Nelson rather, Lini. Let's unmute and have a little chat here.
John, is my computer really loud again?
Yeah.
Mute yours, Lini, and we'll see.
Sorry, I tried to do it on my cell, but it somehow didn't really want to do the Zoom thing, so I'm just gonna mute me. Hold on a sec. And I'm just coming on when it's necessary. Hi, everybody.
That's quite quiet now.
Is it?
No.
Oh, but it's coming back. So go on mute, Lini.
Okay, hold on a sec.
There. Now, is everyone else unmuted?
Yes.
Great.
No, Jillian's not.
Okay. Nice and
There's a lot
quiet.
of noise in my house, so I'm gonna leave
too.
myself muted.
Yeah, I live on a busy street.
Me too.
Rigo, nice to have you here.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. And Andrea as well. And yes, thank you all for joining us. The work over this past week has been to fill out the outcomes. And I got the outcomes to a point of, certainly for this phase, I feel I can say complete. I worked on them all day yesterday, so if you haven't looked, they are, there's 22 of them now. And I would like us to work with them for a little while this morning. And the first step in that is for us to individually spend some time with them. And I think that's going to be challenging on the online document. So I made a PDF, a 2-page PDF of them, and I'm going to send it to each of you by email so that you can open up and have a copy of them to read. So I'm going to do that now, and if anyone wants to chat about anything while I make that happen, please go ahead.
I'd like to, I guess, ask a question or gain a greater understanding of what happened on the last call, because I listened to the last call, I think, twice, and I still had a little bit of a difficulty understanding what was discussed by the end of it being having other people come on the next call and map out for them. I would take a particular health concern or something that they would like to accomplish or resolve, and apply that to the 5 sort of columns that you created, John, and sort of transpose onto those to have a greater understanding on what the developmental outcome would be. Do I understand that correct? Yeah,
and no problem having questions about that. We're basically going to go over this now, Rigo, and I think we'll cover your questions as we go.
Okay, thank you.
And we're going to go through the process that I asked you to go through. So, I would love this conversation to be collaborative and have an opportunity for everybody to do what I did in some way with Jillian last time. I'm just going to send these.
Thanks, John. I'll hang tight and listen.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess, am I on mute? Oh, there it is.
No, can hear you.
It just arrived. Thank you, John. I was just struck by what you said about creating lasting health, starting with ourselves. And Marsha and I were just having this conversation yesterday about our spiritual, physical, emotional health. And basically, you know, we all go out and do these, the people on the call, for instance, us, go out and do these big things in the world and, you know, save the world in some way or make a difference. And it's, of course, it's amazing. And that it really is our reason to be here is actually for us to be empowered in and growing and letting go of things and our own essential lasting health. And just how you just basically echoed that in your opening comments today, John. And so we're all connected.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
What I loved about it is that the question was perfect. Is that what is your lasting health? So I had to look into myself and seeing what I would want in my life and what I consider lasting health. And that was really a great insight to that. And one of the questions that I had from last time we spoke was, be very interested to see the crossover within the group that, you know, was there specific things that there was interest in all of us? Was there a crossover?
Yeah. So I think there's going to be a lot, like last time, a lot revealed, and I hope a sense of the pieces of the puzzle kind of coming together. That's what this process is all about, that we together find what, you know, discover what lasting health is for ourselves while we are coming up with a program to support others in that. So does everyone have the document? There's 2 pages there that have the 5, between them they have the 5 program streams. And then there are a number of outcomes beside each of those streams, and they add up to 22, and they're numbered. So please just take 5 to 10 minutes and read them and be with them. Reflect a little bit on them. And then we'll go a little bit more deeply into them. Okay?
Yeah.
Is that good for everyone?
Yeah.
Any questions? Great.
Just unmute us for a second.
Yeah.
Unmuted.
Yeah, I'm muted. Do you want to say something? Go ahead.
John,
Yes.
I think our work here is done.
It's great. So what is the lasting health program? Great. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You just
Not-
got it there, like
Yeah.
beautifully written, summarized, expanded, pointed to, it's just amazing.
Yeah. So when somebody says, well, what is lasting health? Bang. You got that. And also for me, what I'm seeing is, oh, okay, where's our gaps? I mean, physically, where's our gaps? And I'm like, for instance, as an example, in number 5, develop movement practices. Well, I've been thinking about doing 2, the body.
Yeah.
And here's an area, the gap is finding the practitioner that is actually developing, creating movement, for people.
Yeah.
Whether it be yoga or other body type movements. Maybe it's melt, maybe that's an area to bring in.
Melt, right. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the modality that's best suited for a practice?
So we can ask that question now and then go back into the content stream and go, okay, what is it?
Yeah.
When does it come in? How does it unfold?
Exactly. And we had this conversation last week, Leni, is that we went, oh, okay, with Ray, and we went, okay, who does melt? And there's a lady in Nelson that does melt. So we want to check on that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have a great program in Vancouver for melt.
And I have a feeling that what we'll be doing in some areas is bringing a number of modalities that complement each other, and we'll weave them together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I wrote this and I only got halfway through before we started talking. Does anyone want more time to be with this?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Lena.
Hey.
So somewhere in here where we speak about our experience of being in our bodies. So in the body section, I see like there's the particular components themselves and the movements and what we put into our body. Where is the somatic experience and sensing and being grounded in and being home in our bodies?
Yeah, great. So this is, Helena, thank you. When we go through that and we have that question, I want that question to right now result in a note.
Yeah.
And maybe the best way to do that is for me to put that note next to one of the outcomes and say, we need language to point to this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Sure.
You want that pointed to, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to do that. This came up yesterday when Florence and I were talking. One of Florence's words is posture, and posture is not on the list as a word, but when you go in to the outcomes, you can see how
Posture would go with 5, do you think?
It's somewhere in there, yes. So
Helena's one maybe with 12, maybe.
Let's see.
Hold on a second. I've got to get,
Well, that's our natural world, right? And cosmos and life.
Where would you point it to?
That's where I'm like, I don't know where it is. So, and I think partly because I'm thinking of this from an integral framework, and I wouldn't say that it resides in body as like the objective, personal, tangible.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge, and to a certain degree, we're not going to be able to. It's going to be in different places.
Okay, good.
So there's an embodiedness that you're pointing to, And I know it's here, but if you're pointing to it and asking the question, then it's not, I haven't pointed at it. So I kind of think of that as, when I think of these 5 areas, what first comes to mind is life flow, as a way of collecting all of the aspects of what you're speaking to, without isolating it as it's not body, and it's not mind, and it's not spirit, even though it belongs in each of those. Am I?
Yeah, I think part of where I see it goes missing is that when the objectives are to understand and know, it's in the realm of our intellect and knowing versus the experience of being.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
And the other thing that I'd like to say to that is that each of these outcomes, we can now build out from them with a list of 2, 3, 4, what we could call muscles or skills, or that the embodied experience would be part of this outcome and this outcome and this outcome. So
yeah, it's good. I'm starting to see it now in terms of like because the understanding, it's almost like the most superficial level of it.
Yeah, and we have this. This has always bugged me in integral coaching, and I question. I come back to it again and again and again. And that is, we have these lines of development. We have 6 lines of development. We work in integral coaching. I think Ken Wilber has referenced 20-some, 26 or something, and there's more lines being added by different people. I've added a healing line of development, which is fundamental to lasting health. But we say the cognitive leads. And I question that, but I also keep coming back to it and go, okay, well, the way in which we can communicate that to and reference that as a first step with participants is to recognize that you're going to learn this and understand this, and then that will lead to the embodied experience of whatever. So I think what you're pointing to, Alina, is a next step. But I want to find the best place to connect that note.
Any ideas from anybody? Why didn't you put the question to the group? Is the word posture, or is it larger than that?
No, that I just put that in as an example of an outcome that Florence spoke to me about yesterday.
Okay.
It's a word that's not on this outcome, and yet it's important to her. And I'm demonstrating that that's, I think, where it belongs for now. But the most important thing is to make a note of it. If it's meaningful to you, any of you, I want it to go on this map.
Can I add something? Do you have a particular order you want to go through this, John, or because we're just jumping in? Is this okay?
This is fine, but I wanted to complete with Helena.
Well, I would like to speak to what Helena was saying.
Fantastic. Okay.
If I understand it correctly, not to use the word understand, but I think awareness to me is a good word.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness to me implies both the somatic and the cognitive and the intellectual. It's more than just a knowing intellectually. It's sort of an embodied knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of different interesting paths to awareness, both somatic and cognitive. So I just put that out into the...
Yeah, and I would like to see those two words relating to Helena's point, awareness and embodiment.
Embodiment, thank you.
I use embodiment and awareness in some places here, but I want to make a note of that, and maybe I'll just put it in a floating topic. I'm working on the mind map right now.
I think
So maybe every place, it would be interesting to see if every place that we use understand, we use the word awareness or become aware instead of understand, if that brings it to a different level.
I mean, I think to elaborate a little bit on it, for me, it's a level of competency in staying present and attuned to the sensations in your body and the experience that you're having in your body. So it's like the mindful attention that we can have on a conscious level of focused attention, but on our physical experience. And it allows us to sense into what's happening, what actually happens in our body as we eat something in particular and as we move.
Yeah. Helena, I'm going to interrupt you. You're hard to hear. Do you have a volume? Can you put the volume up?
I may be able to plug in. That can.
That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, way better.
Would you like me to start over?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I relate to it as a competency or ability to, and a practice of staying present and attuned into the sensations in your body, as something that actually allows it's like a foundation or a complement to, as we're going through movement. There's the ability to move and to flex the muscle and have the strength, but then there's the presence that you have of being in the sensations in your body as you do that, and the consciousness that you hold as you're moving, and similarly to as you're eating. So how you in meditation, our practice is the focused attention on a particular point, but here it's the more of a spread sensation and attention in your body. Mm-hmm. And it's the part, it's a muscle or a strength or a competency that allows for a stronger relationship in our body and in our well-being and pleasure.
Yeah, fantastic. Helena, I have a project for you.
Great.
I've made a note of this. It's on the mind map now. As a separate bubble and right next to our outcomes. I'd like you to write an outcome.
Okay.
And I think it's a separate outcome. And then we'll figure out where to put it. You and I can talk about it perhaps some more. But would you take it on as writing it?
Yes. And
Fantastic.
So outcomes are sitting at the level of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. I'll do that.
the depth with which you're talking about it is not, to me, is not something that is an offshoot of what's here. It's something more fundamental. And I know exactly what you're speaking to, and I think it belongs here as a fundamental universal outcome.
Mm.
And John, I agree with you. And when I was in Burma in 2016, I went for a couple months to do Vipassana insight meditation in a monastery there. So it was very orthodox. They don't focus on a point when you meditate. You can focus on the point where your abdomen rises and falls with the in-breath and out-breath, or you can focus on a point at your nostrils, in-breath and out-breath. But what they recommend is the focusing is on the entire body sensation.
Yeah.
So there's some very interesting Vipassana meditation that can be used as a tool. And I think getting to that objective, one of the very many tools that Helena is talking about.
Yeah. And I love this because I think that in general, our culture does something a little bit, there's a bit of a disconnect with the body. As much as we pay attention to the body, we don't really pay attention to the language of our body as separate than what our mind will interpret, as though our mind is in charge of speaking for our body. That's a sense that I have.
Just reminds me of this book that is by Bessel van der Kolk. He's like one of the preeminent neuropsychiatrists or neuropsychologists in trauma work out of the Trauma Institute in Boston. And his latest book is called The Body Knows the Score.
Yes. Yeah, I was just noting that yesterday.
Yeah.
And that brings up another point. How shall we? I would like to make note of those resources.
Yeah, great.
Another book that you mentioned when we spoke, and you mentioned it on a call a couple of weeks ago, Marcia, was Trauma and Recovery.
Yeah, I'll send you those resources.
So I think I would like everyone to, as a project, all of our development team, to say come up with a list of
a library,
5 to 10 books, websites, organizations that are suitable resources for us to know about and to reference as we develop the content. Does that make sense to everyone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Florence, could you please make a note of that?
Yeah, she's done it.
And we'll send out an email when we have this call recording posted. Okay, great. Thank you, Marcia.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Are there any other?
Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead if you want to. It's totally fine. Okay. What briefly came to my mind, or not quite briefly, actually all along, was developing intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And which we see in clinic is often the root of a lot of psycho-emotional problems. And really, and Helena, when you were starting this topic, it was all in my gut, right? It was all, I could feel it so well, I could not put any words to it. And that's exactly what you were talking about, is developing that ability of intuition. And then when we feel it and when it becomes part of the body, then we can put slowly but surely, with the input of the heart, we can put words to it. And we know that that is the truth of who we are and what we want to do and where perhaps our obstacles are. So wonderful topic. Love it. And the references, I probably send your Chinese medicine references.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing about intuition. I have a friend who's struggling with a health issue right now, and their biggest challenge has actually been listening to their own intuition and inner guide, and they've been ignoring it, and then suddenly woke up and it really shifted to actually start listening to that kind of intuition or the inner guide, and that seems to be what shifted things for them. So I appreciate your comment. I think it's really important.
And when you speak about that, Leni, does number 9 of the outcomes resonate as full enough in speaking to that?
Sorry, I have to go to number 9 first.
Yeah.
Deepa. I think that just an intuitive self, it needs more weight. Here it is lumped together, and then it becomes probably another little sidebar that elaborates on all of those topics within number 9. And so, yeah, it just needs a little bit more attention, I think. But yes, you're absolutely right. It is represented in this particular point, number 9. There's lots going on, and I almost think it could be a separate part, like Helena was elaborating on before. I think it needs more attention, that aspect.
All right. Now I've made a note on the mind map of that.
Could that also be possibly, could that intuitive self go first in number 9? And then the rest is under that?
Yeah, I added one of the things that I was questioning as I was writing this was the last line, learn to accept full responsibility for conscious mind. I actually think there is a case to be made for accepting full responsibility of mind in total. And I see what you mean, Leni, as I'm saying this, that what is our mind? Some of the links that we're making here are artificial for the sake of, and this speaks to what Helena brought up, that the intuitive self doesn't just exist as a part of our minds. It's our body, in a sense, it's our body and our mind and our spirit in cooperation, speaking together, feeling together. And when it's so common in our culture, like the friend that you mentioned, Helena, that doesn't, wanted to question intuition. We do this all the time, and in a sense, our culture supports that. Don't take your intuition, your intuitive thoughts with the weight that our conscious mind can apply to it.
Yeah, John. I mean, you're so right. I mean, I usually tell people to get the mind out of the way. when we do our somatic emotional release work, and we in Chinese medicine, the heart is the empress of the body, and every meridian pathway, either directly or indirectly, goes to the heart. And when we start listening and feeling with the heart and thinking with the heart, then it's true intuition and it's true body sensation, and the brain is just like a hard drive we just pull data from. But that is the truth, and the brain is just then it can really confuse that intuition, because we can come up with anything with the brain. And
Yeah,
so,
our brain just loves to come up with stuff.
yeah, I usually call it, sorry, in quotation, it's a bullshit machine, right? In comparison to the heart.
Yeah.
The heart is the truth.
And I realized that word heart is not on this, and I just added it. I added it to the bubble beside the intuitive thing, and it makes me think that the what is also malleable on what we're working with here is these 5 streams. You see, the one life flow has ended up with more outcomes than any of the others. And I think if we move this number 9 that we're speaking to right now, that includes intuitive self, to life flow, it makes a little more sense. That undermined, the fact that it's undermined points to a limitation, and we want to rather point to an expansiveness of how bringing this in creates flow in our lives.
I would definitely, though, keep the taking responsibility for what the mind creates under the mind. Yeah,
Okay.
and what we've been talking about, that little piece just now, is in landmark terms simply morass. The mind just generates shit all the time.
So separate that out into another.
Yeah, well, if you're moving, sorry, it's not in front of me. Let me just look. You're moving. Where is number 9? And upgrading the intuition, which I totally support, somewhere else. I think that's a really good idea. But learn to accept full responsibility for the conscious mind, I think, is very much a mind that should stay there. And that's just a practice to develop.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful.
John, I think life flow is maybe an outcome of that. And I would actually put it perhaps, and this is just a suggestion, to put it into the spirit part. Because it is intuition.
The intuitive piece into the spirit part.
Yeah, because it is a little bit of a connecting to the greater one.
Yeah, it's in a sense, it's what our spirits have such a hard time with living in our human bodies.
Yeah, and the life flow, like being connected with that spiritual aspect that also opens up our intuition and connects with the greater collective one. I think that is what we need to plug in, and the life flow then comes with it. It's kind of an outcome of it. So I don't know. I just put this out. I would put it maybe in spirit. Well, but that's up for discussion.
I've made a note of that.
Thank you.
Okay. I love this conversation. This is really going well. Would anyone else like to point to something, question something, add something?
I would just say this is fantastic, because this is pointing to me, it's pointing to the organic matter, the way that, I mean, we're talking about, words on a page and stuff, but the actual process is organic. So everybody that comes into this will be attracted to have things to add or to take from, be pointed to more specifically than others. And it's a very organic process. So,
yes.
So I can see this continually being updated and shifted until it sort of starts to sing. and we'll get it to a certain stage, and it's organic.
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to say something.
Thank you, Rigo. I'm waiting for
No, when I look at the map, specifically on the life flow, all of us coming from a sort of healthcare background can really resonate and relate to all these points. But there's one point I don't see that personally resonates very strongly for me. And when we talk about life flow, there's something for me to be said about sort of personal life flow. And what I mean is that many times people that may come visit the Sentinel are running at a certain pace that is dictated by their culture and by their civilization and by their society. And people are burning the candle at both ends. And then they come to the Sentinel and they find a place of tranquility, of refuge, of being able to slow down. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really see that under the life flow. It's just the ability to kind of resonate towards your own pace or your own flow and not immediately, like hang on to or attach yourself onto your work week or your work or all the things that that you think are being demanded of you, maybe because there's something you're not or haven't emotionally addressed. Because I find that people have sometimes major shifts when they go through an experience. And if it's not fully implemented or followed up upon, it's almost like they're sucked back in by society 2 weeks, 2 months later.
Yeah, and you're pointing to one of the things that we know we want to address. It's very important that we support the participants to have the experience of being able to calibrate that and adjust and recognize it and be able to have more empowered to make that choice for themselves.
Yeah, if I could say something, that was really coming up for me when I looked through this. Just thinking about when we started the mind map, I think I added family and community and that piece, and reading through these outcomes, I still have this feeling, and maybe it's because I'm working so much in the psychedelic kind of world where, this concept of integration is all the craze right now, and people are trying to understand, like, what does it mean to have a profound experience with different psychoactive substances, maybe in a retreat setting where you have like a huge impact on your life. And then how do you go back to your regular life or your regular community where things are as they always were, you've changed, nobody else has, or things around you haven't, and how do you then have the support to rejoin your community or do your day-to-day life or be with yourself or be with your partner. And for me, when I was reading through these outcomes, there's a little bit there in the family and community, but I still don't have a feeling that that's really there, of this idea of even if say suddenly today to tomorrow you become vegetarian or vegan, you then have to go through life and maneuver it in a different way. And maybe your family thinks it's strange that you come back with these new ideas that you might have changed. And that can be a real push up against for people. Especially if they also have a new community who's thinking like them, who's learning the same things, and maybe it happens with Landmark or other things as well. And I'm not sure I could feel it in the outcomes yet, this idea of supporting people with how to then interact with the world if they're kind of enlightening or shifting in a different way, and how to support people. And I think the cohort maybe can do that, but seeing that in the outcomes in a way of this kind of piece that I don't know if I want to call it integration as the whole psychedelic field is calling it, but I think there's something there that still needs to be fleshed out. And I'm not sure quite how to do that or where.
Right. How does that resonate with you, Rigo?
Very much, because I think that it's a little bit, it kind of reminds me of when you're like in high school, let's say, and you have lots of friends or whatnot, and you leave and you come back 4 years later, and then there's some people you've noticed that they're trying to connect with you on an older plane that you have changed. You're not that same person anymore. And in a way, you have to almost ask for change or ask to have a conversation or communication about implementing your new self back into your community, instead of being a yes person and saying yes to everyone around you for what they want, and then actually they're slowly absorbing you back into the way they work, not in the way of your own independent or your own personal flourishing inside that community. So it becomes a little bit of this dichotomy, this conversation between that. And I think it's important to find tools or ways to implement your newfound self, and with a certain level sense of joy and pride and happiness to implement that.
And Andrea, even though you pointed to community right off the top, and from what both of you are saying, it really feels like an aspect of flow, how one flows through their life.
How do you bring this mindfully into your day-to-day? So say you go to the Sentinel, you have a lot of support to eat in a certain way, to not drink alcohol, whatever it is. When you're back in your own space and you're on your own, that's always more difficult. So there's a level of the kind of all of the things that people are learning. Where's the support, and just how do we name that support, or maybe that ability to carry that through your day-to-day.
Yeah, at the Sentinel, you have the ability to communicate, let's say, transparently, or the ability to say, no, that doesn't work for me right now. Whereas you go back into your community, and many times people don't have the ability to say no to family members, or no to coworkers, or no, I can't do that, or that does not align with my beliefs. And then they just kind of go back to the quid pro.
What were you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Both Rico and Andrea, for me, the whole idea of if I meditate, or if I, my consciousness expands and I have psychedelic, insights and deep experiences, it'll somehow be more peaceful and joyous. I don't believe that, and I haven't seen that. I think the deeper we go, the more disturbing it is to the society, to being in the society we live in. And so in a sense, the disturbances of being transformed are the jewels. And those disturbances are what we build on to become leaders when we're in our community. Like peace and joy are part of it, but it's not the goal to get to. The goal to get to is whenever we make it. But this thing about, I totally agree with what Rico was saying, you don't come out of experiences like this and go into your community, and then it makes it easier for you to flow into it. So it's finding our leadership, I think. It's finding our leadership in a community that doesn't really value the kind of things that we're developing. It may say it does, but for the most part, it really values materiality pretty much over everything. So anyway, that's just my spiel on it.
I think what comes up for me, there's kind of this idea of context, that we're not being out of context, and maybe it's about being. It's like then we're going to interact with the context of society, of our lives, of the world, and not thinking of lasting health in individuals as being outside of the context of the rest of the world, because we're constantly in that context. Yeah. I'll leave it at that because I know other people wanted to speak.
I think that what you're pointing to, Rico and Andrea, is very important, because I look at it as a gap. So there's the gap, right? How does one integrate what they get at the Sentinel and what they're committed to in their lives moving forward? And one of the things that is being put in place is the coaching, ongoing coaching, and the peer-to-peer development, which would look like, for instance, a coach weekly, and then not just that, but is there somebody in that team that they met during that week that they can actually be in communication with? And inside that, and the part of the coaching is who, as an individual being there and having this experiences, what are you doing now in your community, your family, and your relationships in your life to implement that into your life? So they then, after a period of time, there's a self-sufficiency being developed. And exactly what Marsha spoke to, it's not the easy ride. Joy and peace is an outcome of it. It's one of the possible outcomes, right? But so is looking at myself in a much deeper way and looking at the angst in my life as an outcome of this process. And so who's going to hold my hand and who take me through that journey before I become the leader that is leading other people? Where we go into leaders, developing leaders in the world.
Yeah, I absolutely, Richard. And one of the basic fundamentals of that model of the 1 year and in the coaching in between is to have people buddy up with somebody in their cohort, and that's their buddy for the year, and they're in however constant conversation and with each other as they want to be. And so what I'm hearing is we're having what Landmark calls an enrollment conversation. What is required is an enrollment conversation. And so what they talk about is enrolling people in enrolling your world and your family and your friends in your new way of being. Now, the way they solve that is not only whatever you're up to, but they suggest quite strongly that you enroll them in Landmark so that they get what you get for themselves, and then you've got a common language. So we don't really have that to offer people. We can't have everybody go back and say, you got to do lasting health, but there's something, as Richard is saying, there's something about developing leaders people to become leaders in their lives for themselves and for those around them. So I think I don't have an answer for that, but I think that's what we're talking about. And so what can we develop? Like, what can we come up with that empowers them? Because a lot of it is, I think this is one of the most important pieces, is what do you do when you get back to your usual life? It's worse because now you can see. And so it's key to me, and I'm not clear what that is, but we'll develop it, whatever it is. I think it's a really exciting component, and I think that's the piece that falls down everywhere around any kind of work like this.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. And while I've got this just in the space, is that it's important, I see the importance for communicating what may come up for individual. You're going to have breakdowns in your life. You're going to not want to do this. You are going, there's a number of different things that show up for us when we are going through a shift in life. And I think it's, as we move forward, we want to make note of these things that will show up. So before they actually happen, we can communicate to people that come to the Sentinel, watch for this in your life. This may happen. And then be there to support that. Support the breakthrough at that stage, because that's always the leading edge, the access to a shift in a consciousness or a way of being in life. Okay, it's dead out there now. So
Don't make it mean anything, Richard. We're just thinking.
Yeah, absorbing that. So what I'm taking away from this is that there's something that we need to, there's something that we need to point to in this, because I think it's a powerful point. And we know at the same time that we want it addressed. It is to a certain degree addressed within the program. We're going to address it within the program. I'm wondering, are we pointing to another outcome? A separate outcome? Or are we pointing to an existing set of outcomes that need tweaking to include this point?
Well, I think it is a separate outcome, and I think it's the biggest outcome because it's the piece that is the most, I think, influential about whether this is lasting or not. I really do. It's like you can do all the inner work you like, and then you come out and go, here's the world, you know, for the rest of your life. Oh, yeah? Really?
I love that, Jillian.
That's a muscle that really to build people. And I think that's the first outcome, is to have this actually be lasting, actually be sustainable, like really sustainable. Despite, come what may, despite all those people that go, oh God, you're still going on about eating animals. I'm sick of it. You know, all of whatever it is. Just have one drink. It's a party. It's Christmas. All of that.
Well, the lasting part, I think you've really hit it on the head, Jillian. And for me, I think part of it is, you know, I used to not believe this whole change yourself and you'll change the world, you know, focus on, you know, but I do think that we're doing this because our society isn't a healthy place to be, and it's not holding lasting health very well. So it's like, if we only focus on the individual, we lose the community. We lose the fact that we actually have to see change beyond ourselves. So, and I would hope that the Sentinel will have ripple effects beyond the individuals that it's supporting. And so what does that look like for an outcome? Maybe the outcome is about being beyond the individual who attends. It's like the outcome for the Sentinel or for this program is actually also an impact somehow in maybe small ways on society beyond the individual.
And also, beautiful, like really, Jillian and Andrea. Another word that comes to mind for me, and I don't know, maybe it's in there and I missed it, the whole issue of leadership. You know, like John, your health journey has brought you to where you are today, which is, in this context, you're a leader here. And there's something about taking what we get. For some of us, it will mean that we're leaders for others in the community. So just that word comes up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I can't remember where we've got it written, but certainly in our creation process for the Sentinel, creating leaders is one of our big things that we're doing. We're sending people back as we're creating leaders. People see themselves as leaders and they become leaders in their lives, which is realizing the full potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where to go from here?
Well, here's the other piece that just came up for me is that
yes,
got these wonderful 22 items, and we're in the middle of developing a website. And I'm just thinking right now, I'm going, okay, we're talking about expanding and what's missing and everything else. And there's the other question arises: how do we condense this down to lasting health? Right? It's a condensing conversation. So
yeah.
That's the whole, so how do we distill the essence of these 22 items into
a sentence?
Yeah.
I know, even because I thank you, Richard. Thanks for reminding me. I keep meaning to say this to someone like you, John. Like I tell people about our signature program, we have this wonderful team working on it, and I can't bloody articulate it. It's like lasting health is, and then I start, you know, blabbering. So yeah, that's something that we need to do. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, so that's once, this conversation and more to get a sense of the fullness of it. And then we can find the language that boils it down, because we're going to have to be able to speak to it, like you're saying, Jillian.
Well, yeah, and we do have another team that's able to take these things and go, because we're all in this expanded way of being here. We all bring our specialities to everything, and then there's others that condense these things. So it may be that we start sharing this as well with our web development planning group and say, look, here it is, and what are you going to do with it? And see, get another angle on it, because we're in this pot, and it may take another angle, which is out of this pot.
Mhm.
So I think the document you shared a while back, John, I think there's some describing.
You're breaking up, Andrea.
Can't hear you so well, Andrea.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll turn my video off.
Great.
Sorry, I have terrible Wi-Fi. Is that better?
Better.
I think,
Yeah.
you have describing what lasting health is as a definition. And what I would say that this document is like working a lot in health-based nonprofit world, is that we want to also talk about impact. And so you're out of the outcomes piece, I think would come more a series of impact statements of like, this is the impact. So, yeah, I think at some point we will get to the point of like writing impact statements, or thinking about the impact. There's like the what and the how of the program, but there's this kind of idea of why and what the impact is. And I think the outcomes piece will help to articulate what the impact of the program is for different materials.
Did you make a note of that, Florence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank
It's
you, Andrea.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard.
No problem.
It's like, you will experience from this X.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
it's
then-
like the hope impact on people's lives, and then the evaluation piece is that you use these outcomes to then develop what your evaluative questions are following the program, and then hopefully you get testimonials from people, and then those testimonials to some degree start speaking the impact for you in beautiful ways.
Yeah. And I'll just speak one more time with this. It's like when we do the impact, or you will have this, then we can start to measure. If somebody didn't have that outcome, we can measure the difference between what we're doing, what the outcome said, and what was missed. What was the gap? What was missed in between there? So we can, maybe it was they needed more coaching, or we didn't follow up on something. It's our responsibility to make sure that people implement the program into their lives, not just a week at the Sentinel.
Yeah. So you would also develop something called indicators, which is like you have outcomes, and now how do you know if somebody got there? You have to have a series of indicators to determine what you can even measure, to determine, and then how. But I think, at the moment, that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves, so it's good to think that it's coming up, but also not be too stuck on getting there yet, and really being clear on kind of hope for outcomes.
Too late.
Yeah,
I'm going, okay, let's have an indicator. Let's go on the website, and each individual has their weekly tick off. Yes, I stuck to this diet. I had the coaching call. I spoke to 3 people in my life and told them what a difference they make. So, and you have these things that for them personally that they can go to and go, I completed that. And then we get to see, did they fulfill on what they said they were going to do, or did they not fulfill on what they said they're going to do? So thanks for that. I'm my mind's just going out with the questions that are coming forward. It just opens up a whole new area.
Just one other thing about that. We just had a coaching call with a colleague, a Landmark colleague, and we have a power call every week. And she's had a lot of breakthroughs just recently in Kundalini yoga, and so fantastic for her. It's worked so well for her. And when I was listening to what she was describing, her experiences, it's just really all about loving herself. And so, if we're having tick, I ate the right food this week, those are all sort of the nuts and bolts stuff, but really the bigger thing is this shift in attitude about valuing yourself, valuing myself, loving myself, like nurturing myself. And if I don't do that, then all those other things are just because someone else told me to. I think that's what I need to say.
I'd like to come back to the question that I have from what Rigo and Andrea brought up, and then the wonderful discussion that ensued from that, of what makes this lasting. And up until now, as I've been thinking up these outcomes and content, it's been like, from within me, I know that doing this, creating this, is creating lasting health. However, when that question comes up, well, what is it that makes this lasting? Is there something that hasn't been said? Is there an outcome that's missing? I will continue to ponder that over the next while. But I'm curious about right now. Have I missed something in this conversation where that question has been answered? Or have we decided it's unanswerable? Or have we decided that it must be answered?
If I could,
where are we at?
If I could just, thank you, John. So when you started to speak, I thought, well, that's exactly what I was saying when I started speaking and you started speaking. So it's really where you're coming from in embarking on this journey. Are you doing it? What's the reason to do it? Is it because somebody else would like you to do it, or you want to lose weight, or you're afraid of dying, or and so I think that's the place to go with people initially, is to really develop their back to just love for themselves, like valuing and honoring themselves. Otherwise, it is simply because it's some program that you're doing, and it's not intrinsically a soul journey. It's just a good idea, or you want to feel better, or you don't want the pain anymore, But I think there's something deeper than that. If we can have people connect with that, and then it's not so easy to dislodge it. Mm-hmm. Maybe someone else would like to.
I would also, thanks, Gillian. I'm seeing the importance of a intake form with those pertinent questions.
Yeah.
The why are you doing this program? What's showing up in your life? What would you see if you had this? What would the outcomes be for yourself? Mm-hmm. And have, 10 questions that could be developed from this program, and that we give to people that are coming into the Lasting Health program. And so a very important point. So this is what they said they wanted out of it, and we can track that, and we can be the stand for what they said they wanted in their lives.
Mm-hmm. I want to point to, thank you, Richard. I want to point to the first week of the program. In my vision as it exists now, is an entire week devoted to intake, where intake moves. Yes, there's questions, there's something that happens. People answer questions before they come into the program. There's some ground that is set, but then we experience together a deepening experiential process that involves a number of different elements, like time and nature and group sessions and other things that all flow together into an experience of intake, rather than a cognitive and intellectual expression of where I think I'm at. So that gives us an opportunity to deepen into, for every individual to deepen into what they're bringing, why they're there, and be able to, at the end of that week, articulate all of that and their values and so on in a way that they wouldn't be able to before they came into the program in day one.
Agreed.
Thank you, John.
So,
Because I think, okay, because I don't think people generally would articulate what you just said, John. They would go, well, I've got this, chronic pain in my, whatever it is, whatever their thing is. But really, if we're talking about their soul journey, what really is going on, it's what you and I are what we're just talking about right now. So we can't expect them to say that, but we can encourage, the whole, I think, as you say, that intake is to support them in going there. And even if it doesn't quite resonate with them, but that's the... It'll open up the conversation within themselves. Yeah.
And it'll lay some new ground.
Yeah.
And then we'll be working from that point forward. Yeah. And always evolving and deepening one's experience, one's relationship with oneself, and what's important.
Exactly. And I don't think they might get it right from the bat. They may not get it for a while, and they will. But to articulate that for themselves is probably a really new and weird thing to say. But no, that's what it's about, is for them to be able to get there. Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
So coming again, I'm sorry if I'm missing this, but coming back to what Rigo and Andrea brought up, are we addressing that? Are we really speaking to it? What do we need to add?
I think we need outcomes that are beyond the individual who's in the program or something. Maybe in the community section, like something that the program will have a positive impact beyond the individual. And I'm not sure what that looks like. That's what's coming up for me, but I'd love to hear if other people have ideas.
You see I'll point to number 14, and not to say that this is doing it, but just as a point of reference. Learn to understand, express, and commit to one's unique vision of lasting health. Take the authority role in one's own health and well-being, and become a lasting health leader for others. Now that speaks a little bit to what you're saying, does it not?
I think it speaks to. I think it speaks to it. It's but I think it could also be expanded on. The outcome would be of doing a program like this that you would take leadership in your world, your family, your life, your community. That would be a possible outcome. It's a lot. It's that, and it's what's great. Like I think Andrea spoke to it. What is larger than the self-known, or the known self?
Yeah, Andrea, I sent you an email saying I'd like to chat with you.
Yes.
That would be great. And Rigo, I'd like to ask the same of you. And we could, in those conversations, we could go a little bit more deeply into this. Is that okay with you guys?
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
Okay. And I've made a note. You just said something that was really beautiful, Richard, and I made a note of that. Larger than oneself. Okay. I think I'm okay to drop this bone here. Shall we move on?
Sure.
We have half an hour left. And I would like to speak, I would like to chat about where we're going from here. This is the last call that has been on the schedule. So we are completing this phase of development in this call today. Obviously, there's lots that's come out of this call where we can begin to hone these outcomes. I have found myself over the last 2 weeks folding back into the 5 streams, and in many ways feeling really good about what's listed there in the 5 streams. And I've begun to think more about more focused way about content. So I sense that beginning to look at how do we create those outcomes with content is at least part of the next step for us. But I'd like to hear from everyone about where we're going and how do we get there.
Okay.
Yeah. John,
Mm-hmm.
Richard and Jillian and I were having a discussion last night, because we're having a discussion pretty much all the time about this. I don't know which one of us geniuses came up with it. I think it just came up in the space, which is, it's just a thought. Like, what about every single program that the Sentinel does, every single course, every single workshop being somehow embedded in the Lasting Health program? So there's really no separation. Not that other people who aren't in the official Lasting Health program couldn't come and do them, but it's like incorporating everything, subsuming everything under Lasting Health, whether it's a writing course, a yoga course.
Brilliant. I love it. Jillian, where'd you go?
Where'd you go? Richard, what about you?
Oh yeah, well that's, yeah. And also I'm getting that the Lasting Health, it's very similar, but here's the way I work in the world. Actually I should say it the other way around. Here's how it works in life for me, okay? So I'm seeing Lasting Health as the engine. It's the engine that brings everything. It's the thing that brings everything else forward, because it's the principal thing that is what we stand for. It's also in the sense that if I'm looking on the out, like this is the health piece, but if I'm looking at it in the marketing world and the financial world and all of those pieces that's necessary to have something to exist in the world, I would call Lasting Health the engine, because it's the thing that is pulling and bringing forward and carrying what we're calling the Sentinel forward. And so it struck me that the whole creative juices of Lasting Health and what's being birthed here is that it's the actual core things. And in my personal life, there's always been one essential engine that's moved everything forward. So that's what I see. And so what happens with that, right? So what happens is then energy and resources go forward, and they come around that. They make sure, it's clean, it's organized, it's structured, it has everything it needs to keep moving. The marketing is directed in that direction. Mm-hmm. Everything starts, and then we get flow around our word of what we've said. So that's what I'm getting out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Richard. And Jillian, here you are back.
And so I really had to pee. So whatever they said, basically.
But I remember our conversation back in the summer where you were talking about a conversation with Treya, who is it? Treya. And you were saying the programs at the Sentinel, and she said, Jillian, there isn't a bunch of programs. There's one program.
Wow, I'd forgotten that.
Good memory.
And that has stayed with me. And I keep going like, okay, well, that really resonates with me. But how does that actually play out? And now I'm getting, look at this, it's come around.
Mm-hmm. It has come around.
I'm just getting a bit of a shiver of how beautiful things are work together.
And I've been just ruminating in the last few hours, last night and this morning, about, this sounds crazy, but a tagline, because we don't actually have a real tagline. And if we're doing this, are we a retreat and wellness center and all that? And back to Treya again, actually, because when we did our sessions with them, the branding marketing, they interviewed both Richard and I and what I had said at the time and what she recreated was that we're creating leaders. We're creating leaders in their life, whatever that is, whether you're the president of the United States or, or a mother of three or, an owner of a budgerigar. You're a leader, you're seeing yourself, empowering yourself, whoever you are in whatever life you have. And I think that fits with all of this. That's what
And that's so cool because at the end of the day yesterday when I was wrapping up, I thought lasting health leadership. It's one of the last things that I added to the outcomes. Was that piece that in order to have lasting health for oneself, one must lead with it.
I would like to say, John, just to lead off on that is that this whole process that we've gone through, I don't know how many weeks it is now, but you are the actual personification, if that's the right word, the personification of lasting health. I mean, the conversations we had back in June and the conversations we have now is that, and what's come out of it is that you actually exist as lasting health. I mean, if you were a client coming to Lasting Health, I would just go, yes, incredible. I am so happy that Lasting Health worked for this person in their lives.
And when you say that, what comes to me is that, and this speaks to what's we've talked about in many angles, like that lasting health exists within me. Yeah. And there was a point at which I came to know it, that it existed. That doesn't make it the thing that is leading me. It doesn't. So in a way, I had to come in to what's already existing. That's the wholeness that exists within each of us already. Everyone who comes into the Lasting Health program will have lasting health within them. And the program supports that to emerge. And then, of course, there's knowledge and skills and attitude and so on that go with it. But it is there.
How about lasting health? It exists.
Okay, where to from here?
Other people.
Hmm?
Other people. I want to hear what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like coming back to those individual programs, you guys, what a brilliant idea. I love it. And I think it also gives those participants of Lasting Health an opportunity to be leaders to those people who just join the program. So it is like totally experiential as well at that point. And it allows for that next level, getting to that leadership level. It allows to be experienced within a very safe, awesome setting of Sentinel. So what a great idea, you guys. I'm so stoked. Great. Wonderful.
I want to know what Florence thinks.
Well, knowing kind of more intimately what our actual other programs are that we have coming, it's exciting. And what I'm thinking about is having, as much as like when you guys said that, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds nice. And there's not a ton of work involved in that or anything. What I like about it is that, and what about a lot that we've been talking about, is it takes health out of this area where health exists currently, which is in healthcare. And it brings it into, you know, for example, Brian Fraser's jazz workshop that he's coming to do. And it, you know, how can we connect that to health and bring health out of this small area where people have it in their communities and in their minds, and help integrate it into the other things that are going on. So that's what I'm thinking about.
And what's Rigo thinking?
Rigo's looking through the mind map right now and just trying to sort of bring it all together. He doesn't know where to go forward from here right now, to be honest. There's so many components to take into consideration and to weave them together. So I'm feeling, in a sense, just trying to sort of to wrap my head around all of them right now.
That's why we have team. We work on teams, Rigo.
What's your, can you speak, Rigo, to what you're sensing?
I'm sensing an infrastructure, a skeleton, so to speak, a foundation to move forward from, all the way down to the specific details. I'm very excited, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the marshmallow experiment that we had shown on the last call in terms of how to implement. And it almost seems to me like the marshmallow is at the Lasting Health at the top, like, you know, how to make it staple and how to take it with you wherever you go. And I feel like being part of this team is like, you know, everyone's an architect that brings in a link, you know, a spaghetti link, if you wish, to put it all together.
We are each spaghetti. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
I don't know if it is too premature, but is the next step action? Developing intake forms, developing marketing strategies with those 5 pillars we have here. I don't know. I think we in this summer, fall, well, winter now sessions, we developed quite an amazing skeleton, like Rigo was saying. Can we move forward to action? I wonder. Are we ready for that?
Oh, I'm feeling that draw.
Yeah.
I have I've begun to actively collect resources, things like intake forms. I have more, for example, more intake forms from different modalities to gather, and then we'll use those along with our own sense of the Lasting Health Program to come up with our own unique intake form. I see, where we were going a few weeks ago in terms of partnerships among within the team, smaller teams, addressing some specific aspects of the program. So I could see,
Please.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thanks.
1, 2, or 3 people coming together to address a deeper look at some aspect of the program, like intake and evaluation, like the points that Andrea was bringing up about impacts. That start moving in that direction where we can begin to look at how this program is going to operate.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thanks, John. Thanks. Very important points, and I see where it's also important for us to reconnect with our other practitioners and start to bring them up to speed with this conversation, because at the moment they just think that, okay, I've got a place to come to and do massage, for instance, as an example. Mm-hmm. However, it's way bigger than that, and it will take something to bring up to speed the practitioners that want to be involved in this program.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be Lainey, Richard, and Florence working on that area.
Okay.
Jillian.
Florence, did you note that? Thank you. So yeah, I've started to think about content. One of the things that is very important to me, and it's one of the outcomes, just comes under the word detox. Any of the naturopaths know about this. It was Ariel that spoke so passionately to that, and I know that she's done a lot of work there. I'd like to sit down with her. We've had one conversation. I'd like to sit down with her and have another one about how do we take these things, like there's a clinical, Rigo, you have a clinical approach to detox. But what I want to do is, with the Lasting Health Program, is come up here and look at this as when we use the word detox and we look at it as part of a way of life. What does that mean? What do we want? What do we want participants in this program to understand about that and to integrate into their life outside of taking a clinical approach to it?
Well, the one thing I can really speak to that is that detox is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
Ongoingly.
Yeah. Great. And you and I can talk about this in more detail then. Yeah.
For sure.
Because I love that concept and to explore that and see what that would mean in terms of content that we bring into the program. What does a participant experience in order to get that? See, that's an outcome in and of itself, that one would come out of this program knowing that detox is not a destination, it's a way of life.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Okay. So I offer that as an example of the approach to content. I think that has to happen with every one of the elements that's in the content. And any ideas you have, any of you have about that, and how we can be working together as a team to make that happen, would be welcome. So I see that as being breaking away from the regular conversations. This is something that's going to happen in between the team coming together. What about gathering the team again? When does that happen? How does it happen? Any ideas? Do we carry on these conversations? Do we put together a new schedule?
2 weeks from now. I think I'd miss you guys.
I caught the joke.
If I didn't see you in 2 weeks, I think I'd miss you.
Maybe not between 10 and 12. I really like skiing at this point. Maybe more evenings.
Also, I would like to, what we just spoke to before was that it may be time to start to have the conversation about bringing more people into this.
Yeah.
On the educational side of things. Like, what would that look like? I have no idea, but I'm just putting it out there. If there is new practitioners coming in, this is an incredible format for us to start to grow. So perhaps new invitations.
Mm-hmm.
If that is the case, I would highly recommend, John, since I feel like you've been like really the prototype of this mind map here, that there would be a video, maybe a 5-minute, 10-minute video, if that's even enough time, I'm not sure, that can explain the mind map in all its different categories of what is being done and performed. Because there's certain aspects I look at, I'm like, was I there for that call? Did I see that part? How does that play into it? Some of the wordings, I know what they mean, but do I grasp their meaning behind it? I'm not sure if I do. And then that's for me then creates a certain sense of miscommunications. I just think it's really important that if you bring people in, that some of these aspects get elaborated upon.
I think that's a great idea, Rigo. And I'm looking forward to the whole left side of the mind map was created some time ago. And we've been all over on the right side now. It makes me think of left brain, right brain. I'm looking forward to coming back over to the left side and taking a look at what did we write there and how can it be, how is it affected by the work that we've done in the last few weeks with content and outcomes. So yeah, definitely time to revisit that, hone it a bit, and then I think
kind of bring it together,
Yeah, explain it to others, and then that would be something that could be shared with people outside of this process.
Well, it's just something that you don't have to spend time on this call where everyone's time is included, but a video instead where it's like, if we ask you to come on and we expect you to really take a look at this video John created so that you understand when you come in for the call.
Right. Florence?
Yes.
Could you make a note of that, please?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I wanted to say something that John, you and I spoke about yesterday, this idea of adding more people. And a few months ago, there'd been an idea of starting to prototype. And that's definitely kind of where my energy is to start doing. And the idea of bringing new people on, and rather than just kind of having more of this downloading of information, bringing new people on, but prototyping if we can get people in an actual place, maybe it is a Zoom call, but maybe it's physical, prototyping an intake day and doing it with brand new, fresh people, practitioners, or other people, so that you're doing that and you're gathering more information, but we're also putting into practice some of the things that we're talking about.
Yeah. Richard and Jillian, what do you think of that?
I like that idea a lot. I think it would move it forward. Focused and intentional. I think it would move things forward.
So that's an evolving of this day that I spoke of some time ago, that I've been picturing as, I haven't known what I was picturing it really as, but it was bringing people unfamiliar with what we're doing together and doing something. So a wider, bigger, broader group of people, more eyes on it from different disciplines, and a way of us building the program in an active way, and connecting more and more people to it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Great. Yeah, and when I was suggesting of bringing more people on, I was not suggesting we do more of the same.
Yeah.
Like, we got to this level.
let's funnel it.
And now let's blow that over and have it exactly what you said, John and Rigo, because is it understandable? Is it communicated? And when we sit down and speak about this, is the communication there? Do people get it?
Mm-hmm.
And then are they able to then communicate it to others?
Okay.
Right.
Well, let's create a day. Live and in action.
Right.
In Vancouver. We'll have to figure out the space for it.
In January.
In January. Who do we want to be there? How do we decide who we want to be there?
Mm.
We could say each of the people on our development team, please be there and bring somebody.
Mm.
Bring somebody that they think would be able to bring a unique perspective to this.
Yeah, I'm back in the country after only February 5th, so I'll miss it, unfortunately, but in spirit.
Okay, Andrea.
What about?
You could send an emissary.
What about bringing some practitioners
Yes.
in?
Yes, I think some of these people should be practitioners, some should be educators. Some should be specialists in leadership.
I'd like somebody else from our team to be there, and you were speaking to all the people that are on the team, practitioners, educators, leaders.
Say that again, Richard.
I said it sounds like our team that is on this call.
Yeah. Well, then think about what are we missing?
Well,
Who would we like to be there? That would bring a different capability.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I don't quite understand. Is it going to be a prototyping of an intake? Or
Well, that's one idea. And I think, of course, we can't experience the whole program, and we're only going to have a certain amount mapped up. But it's a challenge for us to map to create some content, or expand on the content that we've got, which we have labels for. It's a way to, like Rigo was saying, explain where we're at in the development process with the with the program. It would be a way to spend, it would be a way to do the experiential piece of the first day of the intake of the first week of the program, something like that. But we'd have to decide what actually could we do in this day.
Okay.
How much time would we need for that? But I think what Florence is pointing to and what is really needed is this taking it into action. Put it on the ground and start talking about it as a functioning program.
What if we brought in
Thank you.
potential consumers,
Yeah,
but people who we know, maybe they're also healthcare practitioners or educators or whatever, but they're people who we would see wanting to become participants in the program.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, especially people who don't necessarily have the language that we're all using so comfortably in this conversation, because it's very easy for us to have this conversation and not have to over explain what we're talking about. But a large population who we will be serving doesn't have this language. So having them in the room is going to be, for me, I think is going to be really important.
yeah.
One of the things that we need to be aware of with that is that what we're working with is the back end of the program, some of which will be the front end. But a participant is never going to see all of the back end of the program and need not know a lot of what we are talking about. So there's a requirement there to be clear about what a participant needs to know about how the program is actually
I
working.
agree, John. And maybe the day could be structured so that potential participants show up for 2 hours in the afternoon or something.
And that there's some kind of activity that we
that they experience.
Yeah, that
maybe.
is more front end,
Mhm.
like the intake day,
Yeah,
the first intake day.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. I think both is important, but they don't have to sit through all our meanderings. Yeah.
So next step,
Well, I
For
also
today?
want to say I do think there's value in this group coming together as a group. Maybe it's a little less frequent, and maybe we look at a different time. But I apart from we kind of miss it all, but I do think there's value to it too. So
Okay, well then let's schedule another call.
yeah, yeah.
And do you think 2 weeks from today is realistic? That's the 31st of December.
Probably not.
let's see, it's
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Let's move to January.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
7th?
yeah. That sounds better.
January is 14th too late? Is January 14th too late?
Well, if we want to have an event in January,
What's wrong with the 7th, Richard?
We'll be in New Zealand, that's the thing.
Yeah, but the next date we're traveling home, so
Oh, what? No, we're traveling home on the 13th.
right. I think the 7th is fine. What do other people think?
good for me.
7th.
Yeah, it's good for me. I'm on a course. I'm leaving on the 23rd to the. I want to be back by the 29th, so I will be in Edmonton,
yeah.
of course. So for the Vancouver meeting, I mean, so there's not a big window there.
7th is good.
So I think
So we'll have a call on the 7th.
yeah.
And
Later.
And if we're going to have an event in January, there's definitely work to do between now and this next call to decide who's going to be there, where it's going to be, what the format's going to be, and invite people so that they can plan.
I have to unfortunately leave our call now.
Okay.
You're the host. Are you the host?
No, I'm not the host, but I am hosting an event in an hour. So
Okay, great.
Well,
I need
let's,
to.
Yeah, I also have to.
let's wrap this up. Okay?
Thank you.
So thank you all for being a part of this call, and we'll all be in touch.
So I just want to spend 5 seconds acknowledging you, John, for your leadership, because your leadership has taken us to where we are now, and it's in the realm of miraculous. And I don't have any more time left because everybody has to go. But thank you so
Miraculous.
much for the inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Happy holidays to all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.